At the age of 15, we moved from New York to Iowa. It was kind of a traumatized, weird mood. I threw like temper tantrums. I cried. I just said, no, you cannot make me move from New York to Iowa. I should also add that one thing I loved about living near New York City was that I thought New York City was just this amazing place. Like, as a kid, we went to the city a lot, and some families, like some of my friends, their parents were very guarded about how much freedom kids could have to run into the city and roam around and play. And my parents were very liberal in a sense that from a younger age, they just let us take the commuter train to the city and do what they want. And they tried to teach us, like, oh, you gotta be on guard in the city or something. New York in the 70s was like considered a scary place to a lot of suburban people. But I was lucky that my parents were like, yeah, go have fun and explore and take care of yourself. And it was like, what an amazing playground to have as a kid, I thought. And then all of a sudden, boom, news comes, we're moving to Iowa because my dad's job. And I said, well, could we maybe go to Ohio or Idaho or something else with I's and O's? I'm like, why Iowa? That sounds so foreign and horrible and scary. So I flew to Iowa in a blizzard in the winter of 1980-81. I don't remember what year exactly. Flew to Iowa, and we get to, we landed at night in this big snowstorm, and we went out to dinner somewhere, and I remember so well, the waitress came up to us and she's like, hi, how are you today? And my family just sat there frozen. And I looked around this restaurant, I'm like, I was kind of scared because most of us had dark hair. Actually, my dad was blonde and then white hair, but we were pretty dark-haired Jews. And I look around and everyone has light hair, and I'm like, and why is this woman being friendly to us? She doesn't know us. She's like, how are you today? So if you go in a restaurant in New York, mostly you get like, hi, what do you want? Come on, I don't have all day. What, you want me to go back? I'll come back and take your, I'm not, if you don't know. And here she's like, hi, how are you today? And I was so scared. I was like such a scared 15-year-old kid going, So I remember my first day of class, I don't remember what class it was, but my first day of one of my classes in high school, the teacher goes, class, we have a new student. And I'm trying to like hide down in the chair. I'm like, isn't there something I can take that will make me invisible? Like, why do they have to point you out? It's like the kind of words I think most kids never want to hear. There's nothing like being an awkward teenager and having everyone staring at you, putting their preconceptions and judgments on you, and just, who is this person? And she's like, class, we have a new student. His name is MaxZine. Okay, that wasn't really my name then, but his name is MaxZine, and he's from New York. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, watch out, class. He has a switchblade in his back pocket, and he's gonna get you. And I just went home and I probably cried or screamed at my mother or something. Why did you move me here? I'm never gonna make it here. Everyone has blonde hair and is scary, and there are people that have never met a Jew before, and they treat me like I'm a criminal. My first day of school. This weird thing happened like 4 months after living in Iowa. I went back to see my friends in New York, and there were some things I found I liked about living in Iowa. Like, I liked being back out once again in the suburbs, but in the country, like on the edge of the two. And I could get on my bike and ride, and I'm in farms immediately, and I'm on beautiful roads by beautiful rivers and beautiful rolling hills, and I loved it. I was like, I couldn't ever bike ride like that in New York. the friends I did make, I didn't have so many friends in high school, but we'd go stay at state parks and camp out a lot and kind of get high and stay up all night. And I totally loved it. We found beautiful oases, and I went back to visit friends in New York, and everyone was in such a rush, and everyone was like almost a little bit rude, it seemed, and everyone was like acted like they lived in the center of the universe because New York is the financial and cultural capital, and so we're the most fabulous people. And it was kind of a turnoff. Like after just 4 months or 5 months, all of a sudden I was a little alienated in New York, and then I went back to Iowa, and I was kind of alienated there too because I really didn't fit in, and I also realized I was a queer boy who was alienated because I didn't know how do I deal with being queer. In the early 1980s, there were very few queer youth support groups. I know there was like in New York City and San Francisco, but I hadn't even heard of such a thing. I didn't have any good way of dealing with being attracted to boys. I didn't know how to cope with it other than to repress it, deny it, and lust after my friends. And that wasn't a good combination most of the time. In fact, it sucked. There was another thing that happened when we got to Iowa. There was we moved there right around the time that I moved to Iowa when I moved to Iowa when Iranians, help me. I moved to Iowa when Iranians had taken over the U.S. Embassy and taken hundreds of U.S. citizens hostage, the big hostage crisis of 1979 and 1980. That should tell me when I moved there then. And when I lived in New York, our next door neighbors were Iranian, and it was totally fun. It was like Jews, Iranians, and Italian Americans coexisting in the neighborhood where I lived. I moved to Iowa, and I immediately saw signs that said, like signs at bars that would say "No Iranians Allowed," and seeing this kind of like stupidity and reactionary racist behavior was kind of stunning. I'm sure there was plenty of racism in New York, and still is, obviously, but it wasn't plainly on sight the way it was in Iowa to me. And you know, when I see a sign like "No Iranians Allowed," and I have teachers that treat me like I'm from outer space because I'm from New York, and the synagogue my parents went to at some point around then had some kind of violent threat on it, so then they have police there protecting it. When I see all this, I'm like, I don't fit in this picture well. Something's really fucked up here. And so I started thinking as a high school kid, I'm like, well, it's time, I'm old enough to do something now. I saw films of the 60s that were still fresh, and I was like, people did something to make a difference. I want to do something to make a difference. And me and a friend organized a petition drive in our high school to stop forcing kids to go to football pep rallies. And we got the rules changed, which was great. It was like one of my first activist things, and I could see like, sometimes if you just organize people, you can make a small difference in the world. So